I was thinking about the Ford GT40 recently because there's a lot of debate about what country the Ford GT40 actually comes from, and it got me thinking about how you actually define what nationality you attribute to a car. It can't be the company headquarters because the Ford Falcon is unambiguously an Australian car and never referred to as American, despite Ford's headquarters being American. But there are other Fords where the nationality isn't clear. The Ford Focus is considered to be both a British car and a German car, so which flag do you assign to it? But let's talk about the car that started this whole controversy in the first place. To set the scene about the Ford GT40, I'll start off with a bit of a story. I'm a big fan of the YouTube channel Laserpig. Laserpig once said a story about the English football team. They won the World Cup in 1966 against Germany, and now everyone in England believes that everyone in Germany must still be bitter about losing the 1966 World Cup. This is a great surprise to the Germans because they mostly never think about the 1966 World Cup, and most Germans don't even know about it in the first place. And the Germans have won many more World Cups, so why would they even care in the first place about losing one once 60 years ago? He then compared this to when the Serbians shot down an F-117 Nighthawk. Everyone in Serbia is absolutely convinced that the Americans are completely devastated about this event that happened over 20 years ago, but most Americans don't even know or care that one American plane got shot down a really long time ago over Serbia, because they've got a whole lot more planes of their own, and they won that war really easily, and it only happened because the Serbs got a lucky shot anyway. But if you're watching this video and you're a proud American, I wouldn't be feeling so smug about the English or the Serbs having their things, because you've got a thing too. This is the Ford GT40, and it won Le Mans a few times nearly 60 years ago. And of course, many Americans are absolutely convinced that everyone in Europe is devastated to hear this news. Most Europeans, on the other hand, don't really care because, well, they like the Ford GT40 and European cars absolutely dominate Le Mans. And it was also 60 years ago, and America still hasn't managed to win any other outright class since then. But there's an even bigger problem, and that is that the car is actually British. Or maybe it's German. That last one's the most perplexing. It's also definitely wrong, by the way, but I'll get into that later. We already know that we don't use company headquarters to designate a nationality of the car, because you can't spell Australia without AU. You also can't go on where it was built, because many cars are built in all sorts of countries across the world, and nobody is going to claim a Fiat is Moroccan. So how can we work out where the Ford GT40 comes from? Well, here is a Lola Mark VI. It's an unambiguously British car. The Ford GT40 was based on the Lola. The Ford GT40 project was run by Lola. The overall planning and the engineering and everything else was done in the UK, but Ford is an American company. But again, we can't go by company headquarters. So maybe we can go by the engine, but you could get a Coyote V8 in the last generation Falcon, and again, Australian car. And if you're going to use the engine to determine a car's nationality, you could do the same for any major component. The GT40 also had a German gearbox, and the gearbox is a pretty major part of the car. You won't get any power down without it. So by that logic, you could call the GT40 a German car. But I don't think you would ever succeed to convince a single person that the GT40 is a German car, because obviously it isn't. So, if it isn't the engine, maybe it's the chassis. After all, the chassis is the basic structure of the whole car. Without a chassis, it's just a pile of random bits and pieces on the floor. The chassis of the Ford GT40 is British. Therefore, the Ford GT40 is British by this definition. But there's a problem with this definition. This is the Porsche 963, and you probably think of this as a German car. But what if I told you it was actually an Canadian car? Well, have a look underneath. This is the chassis. It's Multimatic's LMDH chassis. Multimatic is Canadian, and if you determine a car's nationality from its chassis, That makes the Porsche 963 a Canadian car. But again, how many people would agree that the Porsche 963 is Canadian? The carbon fibre tub is just part of the car that's Canadian. Literally everything else is German. You'd also have to call the Cadillac V-Series R and BMW M Hybrid V8 Italian, as they both use a Dallara chassis. But again, is anyone going to take you seriously if you do so? Clearly, it isn't the chassis. The chassis is in fact just a part of the car, like the engine and the gearbox. How about looking at the overall project management? The Ford GT40 project was commissioned by Ford in the USA, but managed by Lola in the UK. That makes the Ford GT40 yet again a British car, and I think this way of determining auto nationality is pretty accurate. The Ford Falcon project was managed in Australia, the 963 in Germany, and again makes perfect sense. So we can now conclude that the Ford GT40 Mark 1 to 3 is a British car, but what about the Ford GT40 Mark 4? The Mark IV was an updated version, with work done in the USA. The steel monocoque chassis was replaced with an aluminium one, which was then too flimsy, so was strengthened with a steel roll cage, which brought all the weight back. And all this work was done in America land. So is the Mark IV American? Well, it was using the basic design of the GT40 with American updates, so whether you consider it to be British or American depends on whether you define the Mark IV as an entirely separate car to the Mark 1 to 3 versions, or if you consider it to be an Evo version. If it's an Evo, it's British. If it's a separate car, it's American. But the most famous Ford GT variants, the 1 to 3, are most certainly British cars. So when you look up Ford GT40 in Google Images or ask someone to draw a Ford GT40, they'll draw the British car. So that's the Ford GT40 worked out, but this method does make some weird nationalities for cars still. The Toyota TSO 30, 40 and 50, as well as their current GRO 10, are all German cars. The entirety of the design work is done in Germany, the project is managed in Germany, and there's nothing on the car really that's Japanese. This makes this Toyota a German car. This Toyota, on the other hand, comes from Finland, for very much the same reason. And this Hyundai is German, but the Mercedes F1 car is not German, that's British. The team entrant may be German, but we're talking about the car, not the team's entrant nationality. Then there's the road cars that give weird results. This is the VW Atlas, and it's an SUV, which means that it's a really bad car. But it's also not German. The Atlas was designed by Americans in America, exclusively for the American market. That makes the VW Atlas American. But what about other VW American exclusive cars? The American Passat, which has absolutely nothing to do with the real Passat. It's developed for the American market, and is based on a much older platform than what we get over here. It's technologically simpler and was available with larger, naturally aspirated engines without direct injection for some reason. It had a lot of development work done in America, with that project run in America. So is it an American car or a German car? That, once again, depends on if you call it a different car to the 2005 B6 Passat that it's based on, or if it's merely a downgraded version of a German car for the American market. Also, can someone who's watching this in America please explain why you guys get downgraded versions of German cars? It really makes no sense to me. Either way, the Atlas is American, the NMS Passat is ambiguous. Then there's the Ford Focus. I tried to work this one out, but I gave up. It seems like both the British and the Germans claim to have led the development of the Ford Focus project. This means that the Ford Focus World Rally Car is also geographically ambiguous, as an Evo of a geographically ambiguous car must be geographically ambiguous itself. Which begs the question of the pre-2022 World Rally Cars, before the Rally 1 era took hold with silhouette cars. For the new cars, you can attribute their nationality to the team headquarters, but the old cars were modified road cars. So was the Yaris World Rally Car Japanese or Finnish? Was the Hyundai i20 World Rally Car German or Korean? Then of course there's rebadged cars. The new Mitsubishi Colt is a Renault Clio. They haven't even bothered to remove the cutout from the bonnet where the Renault badge goes. Clearly, Mitsubishi has done absolutely no engineering work on the new Colt, so they can't have any credit. So is it a French car? Or is it an Japanese car? There's so many examples like this. What are some more mixed nationality cars? Leave your thoughts in the comments.